You are listening to Beyond the Verse, a Star Citizen podcast. A show dedicated to Cloud Imperium games, Star Citizen, and Squadron 42. Whether you fight, explore, unite, and or trade, we bring you news, updates, interviews, reviews, and analysis. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a pour of Radegast, and join us as we go Beyond the Verse.
Launch sequence activated.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Beyond the Verse Star Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Sulyce, and on today's episode, we will be covering, oh my god, so much news in the last 7 days. Between 323 dropping, the hint at 4.0 coming down the pipeline, tomorrow the start of an Invictus Launch week. But none of that is going to happen until I introduce a really good friend of mine from episode 8. So if you haven't listened to it, go back to episode 8 and catch up. My good friend, Paul from TheAstroPub. How you doing, friend?
Doing good. It's
good.
The end of my contract year for teaching, so I am heading into the summer. That's the happy part.
You are in that, like, you see the clouds, you see the silver lining, like you're about to experience summer like none other. Like we can't relate to how you're excited right now. Done with the kids, done with school. That's good, man. That's good. How did school treat you this year? You doing all right?
Yeah, we're finally over the COVID issues, I think, which was a lot of for those of you who don't know, a lot of just people in general, but kids specifically did like kind of lost social skills. And social skills are so important when it comes to education, because it's not just you don't just learn facts, you also learn how to be a person and around other people and how to talk with adults or talk with supervisor, people who are like above you or people who are at your level or even people who are below your level and those sorts of things. And so I guess 4 years ago, the freshmen who first came into to high school never had that experience, and now they're leaving the school. So now, like, going forward, it's becoming easier and easier because the kids are getting more and more into the whole high school thing. So they're actually adapting a little bit better. So that's the good part. I say that's positive. We're leaving the year on a positive note.
Good.
So,
good. Yeah, I said it in episode 8. I'll say it again. My utmost and sincerest respect for what you and other teachers do. Not a billboard, not something you put on a t-shirt. I am so sincere when I say thank you for putting up with, 30 18-year-olds? Good.
170.
Oh my God.
30 at a time.
Man, I'm struggling with my 8-year-old and 5-year-old, man. Like that. Dude, I have so much respect in you. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
So we haven't talked. Well, that's not true. So I had you on episode 8, but we've seen each other a few times in Bar Citizens and CitCon, right?
CitizenCon.
Yeah. So what has the last year been like? I had you on episode 8, and that was in previewing of Invictus 2953, which I thought was perfect to have you on again at this time. But dude, in the last year, what's up? What's changed? Give me some success stories in the life of Paul.
In terms of content creation, I have been releasing more. I've kind of completely separated my brand from my lore stuff with my regular stuff. So the Astro Historian exists, and I've released a series called The Complete History of Star Citizen Lore, which is now on its fourth episode, which is releasing at the end of Invictus, because I'm not fighting CIG's hype with Invictus with that series. I'll release it when I think people will enjoy it, after if things calm down. So but that's been fun.
That's huge news, man. That's huge news. Yeah.
And then my wife is a author. That's her job she wants right now.
Yeah.
That's full time. And she got in the last year, she's gotten picked up by a publisher. Her book has been been published, and it's been released as of about a month or so.
So I wasn't prepared for this at all. I wasn't prepared at all. But here's the book that Paul's talking about. So yeah, dude, this is great. Tell us more about it. So your partner wrote a book. That's freaking phenomenal. It looks like April 20th. So like last month.
Yeah. She so the little backstory on my wife. She's a bigger gamer than me. She's been gaming and doing gaming stuff since she was like 7. And she's a lifelong PC gamer. So, and I'm a dirty console pleb who converted to PC gaming later in life. So, she is the superior one in terms of gaming, and takes gaming very seriously, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But so the book is actually a little bit about her experience in the gaming community.
Yeah.
As well as her own struggle with being diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's kind of a combination of, like, it's very personal. It's fictional, obviously. It's not a biography or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it follows kind of, as my wife likes to call it, as she likes to say, it's Stephen King meets slice of life.
Okay.
So part of it is a drama where you follow the main character, and she's kind of going through her life. Her partner is her fiance is a professional Twitch streamer, full time. That's their job. They just went full time. They're going to this big convention to really kind of make deals and kind of meet people. And so she's coming along with him, and she's having kind of her own sort of issues, dramas, what's going on there. And then
interesting.
After that, or like while that's going on, she's also having these dreams, these vivid dreams, which are very like trippy and kind of not, I wouldn't say scary, but definitely like ominous. And as time goes on, the dreams and her dramatic reality start to meld together.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it's got a little bit of a thriller aspect to it. It's the reviews have been pretty good so far for people who've been reading it. I read it myself. It's good. So
well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope you provided notes and everything, That's funny.
I got to read all of the versions of it. So
good.
But it's out in paperback now, and it's going to be out in Kindle soon. But it's also available at Barnes and Noble and like any kind of local bookstore, because it's done through a big publishing company called Tehome Publishing. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, as I'm here on the site, I realize I've doxed myself. My city, my zip code, my actual real name. It's a great detail page from Amazon, and I should know better because I work there. But here we go. I'm going to add this to cart. I'm not going to buy it. Not gonna buy it because you're gonna see all my checkout material. But dude, that's phenomenal.
This is the wonderful thing about post editing. You can just block out all of the parts that have your name on it.
See, this is why I don't record live. That's a great, it's a great call out.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So funny. That's great, dude. Hey, real quick, for spouses of gamers, whether they're professional, like there is a mass amount of support that they give. And I just want to celebrate, your wife. That is phenomenal that she supports you in your endeavors. She pursues her own passions and has a book. That's a crazy testimony in a good way. That's an amazing testimony. So kudos to her. That's awesome. It sounds like it's based a lot off of y'all. I mean, streamer, content creator.
Oh, yeah. No, it's very personal. But it's not to say like all of it's true. It's like it's based off of things. There's definitely a lot of it is like her own feelings. Rather, it's like raw emotion rather than just like straight what happened.
Sure.
In life, but and a lot of it for just connected to Star Citizen community. A lot of the stuff that she talks about in the book is based off of things that actually happened in the Star Citizen community early on, like really early on when I was first streaming and she came to some of the first conventions with me. In her kind of own experiences, which helped her. She actually met a couple people there who ended up becoming CIG employees, and their conversations helped her along with myself kind of go get therapy and get diagnosed. So like it's that kind of progression. So
very
we want
cool.
to tie that into Star Citizen a little bit. So
yeah, very cool. Well, let's coordinate because I want her to sign my copy. I think that'd be amazing to have a little memorabilia.
There you go.
We're both in Austin, so it should be super easy to do.
Yeah.
Well, great, man. I mean, it sounds great. And again, I'm super excited for you to be entering the summer, a little bit of breathing room outside of, teaching. So I hope this is a good one for you. And what a great time in Star Citizen to be getting on break. There is so much going on. And so let's get the podcast started. Long introduction, but totally worth it. I'm glad we went down into it. So let's go with the segment. Let's do from the community, and then we will get our hands dirty here. So let's go.
Incoming message.
So at the end of every single episode, I'll say this again, I'll continue to say it, we do ask a poll and a Q&A on Spotify for you to get your voice heard. And I think it's a great way for you to get questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts out there for us to talk about. So you can do that. You can email us at contact@beyondtheversehq.com. Regardless, I want this podcast, and this podcast has kind of molded into the voice of the community. So here we go. Episode 57, we had Star Jump Grim on, phenomenal human being. But we touched a little bit on the Invictus Launch Week. And so the question was, which Invictus Launch Week experience are you most excited about? Now, I had to caveat this, and it's a funny caveat. My options I gave you were Javelin Tour, the Idris Tour, and the Polaris Flyby. Okay, so there I was in the PTU, and minding my own business, trying to test out, the convention hall, and somebody in general chat was like, hey, the Javelin isn't here this year. It was replaced by the Idris Tour. And I was like, no, I don't think that's right. The Invictus Launch Week announcement said the Idris Tour was happening, but didn't say it was replacing. Well, long story short, I reached out to Galactica, I reached out to Jake, and both of them confirmed that there will not be a Javelin Tour. It was in fact replaced by the Idris Tour. There will not be a Bingus. Wow. Bingus. New name for it. There will not be a Bengal flyover. It was actually replaced by the Polaris. So the answers aren't really relevant anymore, but I think it's a great question to ask you, Paul. So as you look into tomorrow, really. So as you look into the convention hall, the RSI Day 1, knowing that the Polaris is there in the convention hall and as a flyby, there is an Idris Tour. What speaks to you entering in this year's Invictus Launch Week?
I do think both the Idris Tour and the Polaris Flyby are really important. I think they're important for the development, and they're also important for the gameplay in general, because we actually haven't had a chance to look at an Idris, the interior of the Idris. And it's been something that CIG has been very cautious about up until recently. Yeah. Simply because, the honest God answer is it's Squadron. It's a Squadron issue.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're starting to say, hey, this is the Idris, it kind of indicates that CIG is moving to the point where they don't care so much about Squadron, spoilers, because it's coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
And I would say the Polaris is another exciting thing, only because the Polaris doing a flyby, which means it's the exterior is ready, which means they're heading towards the release of the Polaris, and the release of the Polaris means the release of multi-crew and engineering and more capital ships, and all of those are exciting things. So it's hard to pick between those two. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say the Idris, though.
Yeah.
I think that's more impactful for just everything moving forward.
Yeah. Well, let's stay there for just a couple of seconds. I don't want this to become, and I'm known for it, I'm sorry, I don't want this to become like a Hopian, let's just take some ganders here. But when you look at the Idris, it's completely done except for the missile room. So it's a couple months ago they had the event where you had to chase community members and take over an Idris. You got to board it there, so I think that was the first time that they really broadcasted that. So that into this tour, into the Overdrive Initiative or the Xenothreat raid is going to involve boarding an Idris. My question for you, and again, I don't want to get into like guessing here, but are we in a place where they're going to release it, maybe a sitcom surprise? How close are we to this, or do you think CIG is going to stick to their guns and not release it until Squadron 42?
I think we're close. I do think that they're going to try to stick to their guns as much as possible. But the thing that's really blocking the Idris isn't necessarily Squadron at this point. It's more how should I put it? The resource system.
Resource management.
Energy engineering.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they want to make the ship, when they release it, have all of its functions when it releases. Or most, like almost all of it. And while technically they could release the Idris today, and it would probably be the most overpowered ship in the game.
Yep.
Because only one person firing that railgun is kind of insanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a result, I do think that that's really the big stop. So we could see it being released early. I don't know if it's going to necessarily happen, because I do think it's because it's like 4.0 is coming out, and we'll talk about this later. One of the big parts of 4.0 is engineering.
Absolutely.
And so that means that it is possible, but I don't think CIG has it on the cards for that, because we also know, like, the missile room isn't done.
Right.
And there's probably more stuff they have to do on the interior. And it's one of the reasons, like, for instance, the Idris tour replaced the Javelin tour, was because the Javelin, for those who don't know, its exterior is being completely reworked for Squadron. That was in the Squadron monthly reports in January.
It was. Yep.
So like it's and they've started since that came out. They've been pulling the Javelin from Pirate Swarm, and I think they're even pulling it from what is it, from Xenothreat. So it's like they've pulled out the Javelin from all of these different locations.
Oh, interesting.
For these different things.
I didn't even make that connection, but absolutely, yeah. Pirate Swarm doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah, so I think they're overhauling the Javelin, partially because I'm sure that they're now at the point where they're like, we could release the Javelin. We're close to it. And
stop it!
It is. I mean, it's a Squadron 42 vehicle, but like, I'm sure what the reason why they gave us the Javelin tour was because that was what they had. That was like the levels that they had, or parts that was fleshed out enough from the game, just like, hey, this is what we have right now. This is from like one mission that we have the year in the Javelin, or the couple handful of missions.
Sure.
And we'll deal with the rest of it later. And I think they're at the point where like we can do the rest of it now. And so,
dude, man, so you and I kind of talked about this off recording, but anything, I feel like CIG's in a position right now where anything is possible. Not in a like stretch of the mind, we're gonna have 1.0 by sitcom, like nothing crazy. But when you start talking about the Zeus and the Galaxy and the Perseus and the Idris, like these are all ships that are in the pipeline that I don't know, we could very well see the next 2 weeks. I don't have any data that says not. Right, like we just saw the Zeus in the patch, or not patch notes, but the monthly report from this past month, and talking about it most of it going through Greybox. I don't know, man. Like I'm done kind of guessing, and usually my brand is like guessing and speculation. Yeah, speculation. Yeah. Like, hey, let's have some fun with this. But I don't know anymore. The Idris. No, please go ahead.
I was gonna say the CIG has no brakes. They have removed the brakes from the vehicle.
Good.
There is no stopping.
Good.
Which is good. But, you know, as anyone who has had their brakes fail on them, even temporarily, will know, that is scary.
Yes,
that is I am driving and I have no idea what I'm doing sometimes. So it's both good and bad. The CIG is just going, but sometimes they could just hit that median or go straight into a wall. So
Well, definitely
using that analogy.
Definitely hold on to that thought, because when we talk about 323 dropping, that's gonna be one of my first questions to you: is too much too soon, on the right track, what did we miss? So we're gonna get into that here in a couple of minutes, but let's go back to the poll real quick. I think this is a good one specifically for Paul. I did ask in the poll, hey, we're about to have the AstroPub on, send some questions. So here we go. There's 2 here. I wove in the rest through other means throughout the rest of this podcast, so I'm going to ask you some fun, interesting lore questions. But let's go to Dakota Riley. Quote, what is your favorite ship manufacturer that is featured in Invictus Launch Week based on the lore of the verse?
Okay.
Don't say Drake. Don't do it.
I'm not going to cop out and say Drake, because it is.
No.
But the thing is that Drake isn't technically part of Invictus Launch Week. It's Defense Con.
That's right. Redhead stepchild. Right?
Yeah. So I'll probably have to say Anvil. And that's partially because I'm also working on a complete history of Anvil Aerospace lore video, which is coming out on Anvil Day for this
Nice.
This Invictus. So it's a nice little tie-in there.
Yeah.
But and I've been doing a lot of research on it. I like them a lot because for those of you who don't know, there's the briefest overview. Anvil actually didn't start as Anvil. It started as a company called Case Aerospace. And Case Aerospace was run by a guy named Leonard Case, who revolutionized how ships were developed in Star Citizen universe, because he worked for RSI and worked on a ship called the Starbright. And the Starbright is the predecessor to the Aurora. It's the thing that came out after the Zeus, but before the Aurora, as sort of the starter everyman ship. And before this, ships were designed as technical. You flew your ship because it was designed to fly your ship. You fly it, kind of like a airplane today.
Yeah.
People can fly airplanes, but there's a lot of process, and it's not really seen as relaxing for everybody. It takes a certain type of person who wants to do it. But with the Starbright, the whole idea of the Starbright was to create a ship, or for Case's idea of the Starbright, is to create a ship that was fun, that people would enjoy, to turn flying a spaceship from being a plane to a car. And so that was his kind of mentality, or the idea that it's the everyman ship, but it's the common person ship, but also everyone wants to fly it. Even people who are really expert pilots were like, oh, this is a great ship to fly. It's kind of like the early predecessor to the 300 sort of thing. This is a nice thing to fly, but it's not super expensive.
Yeah.
And that process was I don't know how to. It was impossible. He hated it. He hated every moment of it because he was working with RSI, who had all these red tapes. So he went off and created his own company with his own design philosophy and is this kind of flat management style, wanting to everyone to have input. And that would lead to the creation of the Hurricane during the Second Devarn War.
It's good shit.
Which was originally a Case.
Yeah.
And but eventually he, after the Devarn War, he became the Mezzers really liked him, and he started getting into the military-industrial complex. And then when he was in a flight, he had a mid-air collision, died, and the company couldn't keep up the reputation, and so they ended up closing. Fast forward to the 28th century, a kid growing up in Nova Kiev, Terra, named J. Harris Arnold, saw his designs, loved them, fell in love with them, but it was a niche group of people who actually knew this guy existed. Leonard Case existed. And he starts taking inspiration from them when he gets hired by Aegis to build what we know as the Hammerhead.
Oh,
the problem is
interesting.
Yes, the problem was that his prototype of his version of the prototype for the Hammerhead never got out of had a problem with his quantum drive, so it never really functioned properly. And every time he went out to get feedback from his Aegis overseers, none of them helped him. So he got that same frustration. So he had already fallen in love with Leonard Case, and then found himself feeling very similar to Leonard Case, went out and founded Anvil Aerospace. And from there, he's been using that sort of same design philosophy, bringing back things like the ideas of Leonard Case, which have inspired 2 people who are important. One was the founder of Consolidated Outland, and the other is the designer of the Polaris. The Polaris designer was specifically inspired by Case's designs, and it kind of makes sense if you look at the Polaris.
Yeah.
Polaris has a central area, kind of towards the center, which is not really like a circular.
Yeah.
It's the pad, but it's that sort of kind of a central area located off with a diamond, like a diamond or a kind of arrowhead shape, because that's all of Case's designs were like that.
Yeah.
So. So it's like a nice little piece of lore, like how like this one thing way back was connected to a bunch of different things in it. And that's why I like the Star Citizen lore in general, but like that's Anvil is really cool with that. So.
Yeah. So first off, just right off the dome, like this is what Paul brings to a podcast. Like that like you didn't have notes in front of you, like that wasn't something we prepared for. Like you just spat all of that.
To be fair,
right off the dome.
I literally just wrote a script that had all of that. I'd spent a week researching this, so it's been burned in my brain.
Yeah. Well, and again, go back to episode 8, listen to the original conversation between me and Paul. But dude, man, like the lore, yes, this game's an alpha. We're not here for that debate, but the lore is legit. Like there is so much to dive into. I personally took a break from it because I'm comfortable in development. Amazon Game Studios, like this is my language. So I kind of moved over. But dude, you haven't stopped. I mean, there is, like you said, you're dropping Anvil lore in the next couple of days. That's crazy, man. Yeah. And there's a lot happening with Anvil. You've got the F7C, the Mark II that just launched a couple of weeks, maybe months at this point. You got the F7A, which who knows if that's going to go on sale or not. Hopefully not, because we don't want another F8 F8 ticket drama. But anyways, you've got all these new ships with the Anvil. It's the spearhead or the tip of the spear for like the UEE military. It's a good time to be an Anvil fan. So right there with you. Interesting time with the Polaris. Yeah,
and then like the Legionnaire and that kind of stuff that's happened on. But what we will say about the lore, which I think it's always important to me, is that I think good storytelling requires good foundation.
Yes.
If you're going to tell a story, you need to be in a world that's believable and that people can find themselves connected to in some way. Yeah. And CIG is really good at atmospheric storytelling, and they have writers who are really good at building world building. So now all it has to be is the development has to come together. So that's what I'm finding. All this lore is making me going like, oh, I can see the vision. I can see where they're going with this idea, where these things are coming from. Yeah. And I think that's what's the important part for anybody who's interested in lore and looking into it, is just come from it from a development standpoint. Everything you're looking at has been touched by a developer, and these are all ideas given as a conversations between writers and developers in terms of what they want to see in the game that they're making, rather than just being a bunch of writers who are like, let's make cool stuff up. It's partially that, but it's like, this is what they want to do. We have to come up with a story that makes sense around this concept. Let's go, kind of thing. So, which is nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, complete aside, not part of the agenda, complete aside, but one of the things I think that's been very instrumental or very important to lore, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but the introduction of the Copian and Merrics, like fauna adds to the immersion. There's got to be some sort of tie-in to the story, to the lore. Like, where do these things come from? Where was the first one discovered? What is our precedent or history towards each of the species? And now we're gonna have a space cow coming in 4.0. Like, man, so many questions, but I don't think people tie that directly to lore, but I believe that is directly correlated with lore and the story and how immersed we are with Star Citizen. So how did somebody like you react when you started seeing fauna introduced into Star Citizen?
About the same as that. I'm very interested in those sorts of things, because there's a lot of fauna that they have ideas for, and they showed off a couple of things like the storm wall or the xiphopod, the blind oni crab, and a couple other ideas that they've kind of floated, or the boreal stalker, the whip crab.
Yes,
these are all things they've floated before, and sometimes even modeled in game. But when they started showing off two creatures that I had never heard of and no one had ever heard of. And funny thing is, in 3.23.1, they actually have lore for them. The first thing I thought of is, what happens in video games is players will play a game, they'll see something, and sometimes you just sit there and go, what are you? Why are you here? Where did you come from?
Why are you?
Because because like, you know, the Copian and the Marok have some connection to real life, but they're not actual animals. It's not like a dog and a pelican that you're flying around. It's like weird alien dog cat and you know, hyena thing and a pterodactyl version of a turbo pelican, you know, like just
love it.
Like, what are these things and where do they come from? And I think that's part of that whole, like, and one of the another thing that they're doing recently is they're adding all of the gangs now have their own uniforms, their own armor sets, their own designs. And I think all of this is designed around at making the players go, what is this? Where are these things coming from?
Tell me more, right?
Yeah. And hopefully as CIG begins to add things like the Galactopedia to the game and more kind of stories into the game, you start to tie them in and go, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Now I understand that the Copians come from this one world in Null.
Yeah.
And they've been used as seed animals to create a predator species on newly terraformed worlds. Or the you know, the storm walls are this unique species that live in Crusader, and so that's why they're so protective of them and all these other things. So
yeah.
That sort of ideas. So
yeah. Well, you said Galactopedia in game, and that completely got me my ADD completely off track here, but you know, after 58 episodes, I don't remember who I spoke to about this. So if it was you, tell me to shut up. But dude, finding the lore in the game, like not having to go to an outside resource, except for TheAstroPub's YouTube channel, like absolutely go check it out, go subscribe, but not having to go to RSI's website. But I think a good example of this is when you go to the convention hall in Invictus Launch Week, you're going to have slabs. Like when you first get off the train, there are slabs that define the time capsules or the major narrative events that have happened in Star Citizen. They're in game. So if you ever were curious about where we were in 2024 all the way to where we are now in 2954, it's there on a time table or time lapse, whatever you want to call it, right there in front of you. And you can, in game, go and read. Like that, I can't stress it enough. Like that is the immersion that I want so bad in a game, and I think Star Citizen has that vision. You've talked about it with the Galactopedia being introduced into the game, but I want, when I get into Star Citizen, Paul, I want to just escape reality and just live in State and Pyro, whatever.
And to add on to your point about that, the thing about those slabs, the history of Invictus Launch Week and like where it came from.
Yeah.
It's not like other games where you walk up to it, you click a button and it pulls up a screen and it goes in nice white little text you can read. It's like, in this time, blah, 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 blah. There's no like it's like, oh yeah, I'm playing a video game. Here is this screen. It's like, it's a slab. It's written well enough that you can read it. You just walk up to it and you can read all of the things that it said. It's not like, it's like you would walk up to, military memorial today and be able to read like what's being said on there. That's the same idea. You could just ignore it and walk away. There's no like press F to learn more about said thing. No, it's entirely up to you. And I think that direction is so important, not only in terms of like building a game that matters to people, but also for that, like you said, that immersion, that the fact that you want to get in, you want to be like, this is my universe. I'm going to stay here for a while and kind of explore and figure out what's going on. So nail on the head, man. You're speaking my language. The last thing I'll say, I am still to this day, 2 or 3 years into this, I still to this day will end my gaming sessions by going and getting a double-decker hot dog, sitting down with a drink, and like literally going, even though I could go to the med bed and like refresh, I still sit at the food court. I have myself a drink and I have myself a hot dog just because I can, damn it. Just because I can. Man, we are like an hour into this podcast and like we're not even we're not even into the normal stuff. Not even close. So let's get into the next question. And I'm not in a rush. So hopefully if you're listening, you have 4 hours of content ahead of you. So here we go. Yeah. This is so funny. I'm going to share this with you, like share the screen, because I think you might be able to clue in who this is. This is hilarious. They didn't put their name, but I can guarantee you who this is. So quote, "What up, Paul? Who is the worst human in your opinion, like morally, in Star Citizen lore? See you on the island on Saturday." So we know who this is. You got the meme with a smiley face and a butcher knife. Like it's 100% Groza. It's absolutely Groza. Also, what are the chances that Crusader is actually a cult?
Take it away, Paul.
So Linton Mezzer.
Yeah,
or Fiona Mezzer. Those are the two probably that popped in mind right ahead. The most morally corrupt, because Linton Mezzer literally committed genocide because he wanted to sell condos. Because he got bored and wanted to sell condos.
It's good.
And that's the thing that got the UEE Mezzer regime overturned, was because some dumb kid who murdered his father by blowing up bombs that killed a ton of people, and didn't even kill his father, just as that was just a distraction so that he could surround his father's like limousine and wantonly fire in a civilian population into the limousine, and then it still didn't kill his father. His father ended up taking his own life because rather than being captured. And then he was so stupid that his own sister was still plotting to overthrow him. And she was so stupid because she was like, I'm going to train all of these rebels who hate my guts how to infiltrate all of our facilities. And then I'm going to use them for my own reasons. And then was surprise Pikachu face when they turned on her and did it on their own to overthrow her and her brother. It's like, because it's one thing to be evil. It's another thing to be evil and stupid.
Yeah.
And like,
it's fair.
It's unabashedly, Linton Mezzer is just up there with the worst human beings because of all the things he did in his life.
Yeah.
And you know, it would be one thing, like I said, it'd be one thing if he was just evil and awful, but he was also incompetent, and that's unforgivable. To be a morally like a horrible person and being incompetent at the same time, it's like,
it's a bad combination.
How?
Yeah. Yeah, this is not a kid's game.
No,
the lore is dark if you dive into it. Just
oh yeah, that's an entire video I have to do this summer as well, which is how Star Citizen is a lot darker than you think.
Yep. Yep.
And when we get Nyx coming into the game, like there's an entire story about a statue that's at the landing zone. You come into Nyx. It's a man holding a dead child, and it's about the story of a child who was murdered by the Mezzers and caused part of the reasons why the revolution happened. It's like, hello, Star Citizen. This is we're talking about dead kids now. That's the game we're playing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's worse. I don't know what's worse. A video game that touches those topics, which whatever it needs to be. It's real, right?
Yeah.
Or the writer that thought of it. You know, like somebody's sitting.
Where did you come from this?
Yeah. This is a space game. Okay, space game. I'm thinking dead kids. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's tie it in together.
Dead kids on a factory floor, you know, after working 12-hour shift. That's exactly what I want to know about space. It's like, wow.
Jeez.
But and then the secondary question is
Crusader being a cult.
Crusader being a cult. I don't think they were a cult, but I do, because for those who don't know, Crusader's original name was Seraphim Systems, which is why Seraphim Station is called Seraphim Station.
Yep.
And it's not even like implied. It just openly stated that the company itself was effectively a religious company. Mm-hmm. It was a company founded by people who were incredibly religious, and with the name Seraphim, some form of Judeo-Christianity.
Angelic,
it's, you know, Seraphim is named for angels and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
It's implied in Star Citizen lore that like religion still exists. It's just, especially even modern religions, they still exist back then. It's just they tend to be a little bit smaller because they tend to be insulated with their own communities rather than kind of spread out.
Yeah. And
with that idea, I don't know. I don't think they're necessarily a cult, but I do think that they come across very much as a, you know, like a branch, like a sect of Christianity of some kind, where sometimes they're just on their own side. They're going to do their little thing on their own side.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think the brilliance of the founder, Auguste Dunlop, who kind of took over that whole thing, was he just, instead of rejecting that idea, he's like, let's take that and let's just move it into the things that I want to do. So it can come across as a cult, as being like, come visit Orison, which like the current CEO literally calls it heaven.
Yeah.
Because you live in the clouds and stuff
Sitting
like that.
Clouds,
so it's like,
absolutely.
It's like So it's great, but it also definitely has that, like, is this actually a cult? Come visit our isolated cities floating in the clouds, with all of these religious terms that we're using. It's like, oh, okay.
It does kind of
any juice while you're there, kind of thing.
It does kind of sound that way when you're walking around Orison, right? Like that voice in the back of your head. I know it's the PA system, but like, come visit Crusader.
Yeah.
Or Orison, City in the Clouds.
Visit Orison, the city in the clouds. And then you walk around the city, and all the people are wearing these, like, the exact same clothing. There's very little differentiation. So it gets that Jim Jones sort of vibe going, like, I don't know if I'm safe in this place, but it's so beautiful. So I don't think I think it's an unintentional thing. So I don't think it's a cult, but I do think that you wouldn't be wrong into thinking, this kind of feels culty. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bringing that up. So I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons guy. I grew up playing it, this is a whole nother story, but I only ever DM'd. Only ever DM'd until this year. I'm a character.
With you on that one. So forever the DM. So
it's weird, right? But anyways, religion is a big part in your character building and in your universe building. And I'm curious, this maybe isn't necessarily a question for us to get into as a whole segment, but I'm curious what role religion will play in Star Citizen. Like, we touched on it with Seraphim Station, with Crusader, but I wonder, like, how far down that rabbit hole does CIG want to take this, and what role does it play in the lore? What role does it play in maybe archetypes that you put your character through, or mission sets? Like, I'm curious if they're even going to broach it, if they're ever going to breach it.
Oh, they are.
Okay.
They don't broach it. They dive head first into it and get their heads stuck in the rabbit hole.
Character creation, you have to declare a religion. Like,
yeah, exactly. There are three religions that worship a star. 3, and they're all human.
Yeah, good.
The Outsiders. There's 2 actually. I think there might be 3, but there's 2 that I know of specifically, which is the Outsiders from Lear 2, and the Fire Rats in Pyro. They're kind of like a cult. They're kind of like a religious gang sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's an entire an entire sort of secular sort of philosophy religion called the Church of the Traveler, which is all about that life is a journey, and it's about the journey, and there's lots of precepts about the ideas of trying to, like, decompress from journeys and help other people through their journeys and such. And then there's all of the alien species have their own religions. And like there's, like I said, Seraphim Systems has its own kind of religion, religious connotation. So I don't think CIG is going to shy away from religious stories, and the universe is going to be filled with people who have their own way of looking at things and philosophy. And I think that's part of any good game. You're going to be, maybe not necessarily challenged, but definitely you'll be approached by ideas that you may have not heard of before, or even similar ideas which are kind of molded in a way that's slightly different from your understanding.
I think that's huge in lore, is it answers the question why. Like, why am I playing this game? It's one thing to jump in a ship and go and do delivery missions and whatever, but like, why are we doing it? And some of those questions, like the Van Duel and their obsession with war and how they clan up and all that crap, like that would be the why. And we're going to war, and we address some of those issues. Well, religion can be a reason, can be a cause, can be might be a reason why we go to a system and have to do XYZ missions. So I think religion is an aspect. I'm totally interested in everything you just said. I think I want to lean heavily into that, especially with like tattoos and everything coming. Now I'm kind of getting off topic, but with tattoos coming and the next character creation, I want to see like religious insignia. I want to see it all go hardcore in that direction. It'd be super awesome to kind of, I don't know, like I said, go all in, because I don't want them to dabble and there's this like book that you can read. No, let's freaking make it part of the game where you have to actually make decisions based off of it. I think that'd be incredible. Okay, hard pivot. We're gonna slam on the brakes, hard pivot, because we're gonna go to my Twitter polls now. Okay, we got 3 of them to go through, and I think these are tremendous conversation starters. So for those of you on YouTube, I'm sharing my screen. This in relative to what I produce, this went viral. Almost 10,000 views, 1,500 votes, and there's still 9 hours left. I asked, how is 323 treating you so far? Right? And so my options I gave are a little bit, polarizing, but, I had to make the poll exciting. So number one, damn near flawless. That should never be voted on, but damn near flawless. Great, but needs to blank. Bad, needs to address blank. And then 318 game breaking. And I think everybody has PTSD when they read that. But 318 is like, yeah, you don't touch the game for like a month. Okay. So the results are in. 59.1% say great, but needs to. Makes sense. I think we're happy with it. I think some good stuff, happened, but some issues need to be addressed. That makes sense to me. Damn near flawless came in second, Paul. 18.1%. Damn near flawless. 16.9% bad, needs to address blank, and 318 game breaking came in at 5.9%. I did not expect to see damn near flawless so high. Paul, take it away. What has 323 meant to you? What have your experiences been so far? What are your reactions to 323?
My reactions are going to be a little different from, I think, a lot of people's, because I have been in this game for so long and been covering this game for so long that my brain does not work the way that most people's game works. So
it's done.
Like the idea that 3.23 is coming out, I'm just like, yeah, it's gonna have problems. Yeah. It's always gonna have problems. Every patch is gonna have problems, and my brain is so set on that idea that when I hear CIG go 1.0, I kind of have a little bit of like a trauma response where I'm like, no, don't call it 1.0. It's going to have problems, and everyone's going to hate it because you're calling it 1.0, but it's going to have problems. There's still going to be NPCs standing on chairs. Panic, freak out. So I'm kind of in that great, but because I think that it's good, and there's been a few patches where I've sat back and said, is Star Citizen a game now? Is this a game? Is this more of a game than an experience? And every time I've said that, and maybe a handful of people have agreed with me. This is the first time that I've said that, and I haven't even said that. Other people have said that, and I'm like, yeah, wait, why are other people saying this now? This is not something I'm used to other people saying, and people who often are critical of the game I've seen been saying yeah, this is a game now. So I think that's the best way of putting it is that CIG's UI design, the everything they've done for the updates for the game so far, I don't think there's a ton of it that's super groundbreaking or new for if you've played Star Citizen before, this isn't going to change your mind about this. There's still lots of bugs, there's still problems, but the performance is slightly better, the lighting is much improved, the UI is such a big kind of change and improvement. The AI is a lot better. It's like an improvement on the stuff we already have. And I think that is really caused a lot of people, especially who aren't all kind of super focused on Star Citizen, to pivot and change and be like, oh. I mean, there have been lots of big content creators on Twitch who've been streaming the game for a week unprompted because of the changes, and I'm sure we'll see more of them as the summer goes along, that more of those people are coming in because that sort of change where the visuals are updated and things feel better. It's like, oh, this is good. It's still problematic, still has issues with it with alpha. It's still an alpha. And personally for me, the biggest change is the replication layer split. The fact that that's in, that means I'm huge step. Good. It's a huge step. And it didn't break everything. It was not a 318. I disagree with anybody who says this is 318.
100%.
I haven't, and I have not heard enough people saying, oh yeah, I can't even log into the game sort of situation. There are issues, weird bugs. I experience a lot of weird bugs when it comes to looting now, having some weird problems. But there are workarounds and ways of doing it. And it's it's kind of annoying, but it's that's Star Citizen. There's always going to be something you just got to go, okay, I got to learn how to step backwards twice, spin around, jump up 5 times, and then all of a sudden it'll work, kind of situation.
That's right. Yeah, the solutions is hit escape and then, go into the menus and then come back in. The way I would sum up 323 is, I think for the last 11 years, It has felt like 4 different studios have produced 4 different tools and have combined them into one, excuse me, into one experience, right? It seems very clunky. It never really jived well. There was bad experiences where other things felt really good, vice versa. And none of the UIs like felt the same. This is the first time that Star Citizen feels like a game worthy of being called a game in 2024. It feels cohesive. It feels like there's a design language. There's consistency between tools. It just feels like something that you would take out of the box and play in 2024. And I have not had that experience with Star Citizen yet up until 323. So count me as one of the like great but needs to address XYZ, if not damn near flawless. Because again, I'm basing this shit off of like 318 or maybe 3.0 when like all hell broke loose and it was a miserable experience, right? Like this was very surprising in my opinion to have a huge tech pillar like replication layer come out and no one ever really notice. That's the point. You should not notice when tech gets released. So I love it. We have a whole like segment that I was going to do about Alpha 323. I do want to save like the page. We'll go through like the video real quick and kind of respond to it. But real quick, has anything surprised you? I know you're married to the patch notes, just like the rest of us content creators. Did anything happen or release with 323 that you were like, oh crap, this is amazing? Did not see this coming.
Kind of. There was when I went into the distribution centers, I was expecting them to be, you know, what a lot of things are like the stations. You know how the stations are, they're these massive structures,
huge,
and the actual usable space is like very, very tiny. So it's like it's this huge space, but it's like it feels like a shoebox compared to the actual place where everyone lives and works and does stuff, where everything else is huge and exists for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was expecting that to be the distribution centers, like these massive structures with a bunch of different greebles and other little add-ons. And it's like, oh, this is all nice and great. But it's all set dressing for like a shoebox of content inside of it.
Sure.
And when I actually got in there, I was like, oh no, this is the entire building. Like they just fleshed out the entire building from beginning to bottom, from the top to bottom. Yeah. All of that space is used. And it shows that they've used all that space, and like it feels connected, and it just feels massive. And it was that point that when I was playing through one of the missions there, I was like, oh no, I know what they're doing. This is set up for all of the missions, every mission type, anything awesome, you can imagine that a mission right now is available at that location. They just haven't put those missions in yet. It's like,
crazy.
This is gonna get nuts really quick.
Yes, it is.
And anybody who hasn't had a chance to go, really go in there and look around. You can get like the missions for like body discovery missions, which are pretty. You can get them right away. You don't need a lot of reputation for it. Yeah. And you just ignore the mission and just walk around the distribution center, and you will find. Yeah. It just doesn't end. It feels like it just keeps going. Like I don't think I found lots of unique places that it was like, wow, this is like a tiny little nook that no one would ever find me in, deep inside this facility. So
they're very impressive. And if you're inside of a DC and you open up your map, like it's hard to see where you're going or where you're at, because there's just so many levels to a DC. I think they're currently only on 2 systems. They're Microtech and Hurston. Are those the 2 that have DCs, or do all 4 have?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Microtech and Hurston are the only ones that have them.
Yeah. So I would recommend. Words are hard this late at night. There's Sakura on Hurston. It's friendly, easy to get to, straight out of Port Tressler. Is that what it is in Hurston? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So super easy to get to, but go take 30 minutes to an hour of just walking around and getting lost in the DC. It is very impressive. So good pull, Paul. I love the DCs. And I can see where raids, like not to get into that whole conversation, but I can see where like raids could absolutely take place in one of these large facilities. So super excited to see where they go with it. For me, and please educate me, Paul, I am proud when I say that I am married to patch notes and I feel like I'm a subject matter expert. I did not realize they launched NavMesh. I know they did for Copians. Like, I know they had to for Copians. But I shit you not, I was in a delivery mission, went to a mining facility that is normally friendly, and a Ninetales Cutlass Black, started to take me out, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Why is Ninetales here? And so I landed quickly and I got out to safety. While I was in the one of the buildings, there was a Ninetales patrol, and I took pictures. It's on my Twitter. So go to Beyond the Verse podcast Twitter. There's a picture. There are NavMeshed patrolling Ninetales at mining facilities. I didn't see that coming. Did I miss where they launched NavMeshing for NPCs?
It was not in the patch notes, but it was in the monthly reports.
How did I miss that?
So, how to put this? So what happened was they originally had NavMesh, and it was working, and everyone's like, "Where did it go?" Well, it's supposed to be in game, and it sort of worked in some places, and it didn't work in other places. And people like, "Why is it here?" It's like, well, the problem was that the further you went north or south on a planet, the mesh didn't know how to deal with the change, because I think it was done in like a hexagonal kind of, or it was like a square or a hexagon sort of pattern.
Yeah,
and so as a result, you couldn't have any NPCs at North or South Poles, or even like going up the North or South Poles. So it'd only be working around their equator, which is boring. So they tried to figure out a way of solving that problem, which they've solved with navigation triangles, and how that mesh now works. And they spent a lot of time on it, and they finally got it handled at the beginning of this year. And they slipped it into 3.223. They didn't explicitly say they slipped it in, but they did say it's done and in.
God, I don't know how I missed it. That's incredible, man.
Yeah, and this is going to get even worse for those of you who are listening and watching this. You're not ready, because they can use railguns. And they can use vehicles.
I got my ass handed to me. Yeah.
Like you are probably only 6 months away from rocking up on a mission being like, oh, I'll take out this Ninetales facility, and you land your ship, and then you're far enough away so that the turrets can't shoot you, and you're like, ha, silly NPCs. And you're walking around, and then a freaking tank shot flies over your head, and 2 Novas come rolling at you, while like a bunch of other people are taking cover and trying to snipe you from a distance. And you're like, where did this army show up from? Why is this going on, CIG? I thought I was safe. You are not safe anymore. The CIG has decided to put on hard mode and throw it into full speed ahead and telling you to get good. That's kind of the situation we're running into. So, but yeah, no, I was surprised. I think I am also surprised a little bit that it was actually in.
Yeah.
Because that whole like, oh yeah, there's Ninetales patrols. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, what?
It's crazy.
When you said that, I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
So,
no, and thank God, dude. Because I'll be honest with you, that is what this game has been missing for me. Is like going to security post Gundo, or going to one of these derelict sites, and like there's no real threat. I mean, it's not it's kind of creepy because things are destroyed and you have to like EVA, which by the way, the new EVA system is freaking phenomenal. But going through, there's no real like risk, but this is what we've been missing. Like, imagine rolling up on a derelict caterpillar, and now they've introduced aliens and species, and now you have Ninetales patrols. Like, you don't know what's around the corner. Now it's fun. Now it's immersive. Now it's like, well, maybe my investigation mission isn't going to be an easy 8,000 UEC mission. Like, you might get your ass handed to you like it did me on a delivery mission, like a 2-box delivery mission. But I thought that was super exciting. So I don't know. I'm completely surprised by that, and love the immersion that brings to a simple box mission. All right, back to the polls. We got to go.
Let's go.
We got to go. So this one will go fast because we kind of already talked about it. But the Invictus preview, it dropped, I think, Monday or Tuesday. We got the schedule and what to expect. So here, I ask the Convention Hall showroom, the Javelin Tour, Idris Tour, the Bingo and Polaris flyby. We've already discussed that 2 of those were replaced. But the results, the flyby got 33.6%. The Idris Tour got 31.1%. And then the showroom got 18.9%. Again, I think we talked about most of this. But is there anything about the Convention Hall, like just your basic... I say basic, that sounds horrible. You know what I mean? Like the different like manufacturer show days. Like, is there anything that stands out to you, Paul, that like you just can't wait for? Can't wait to see the NURSA. Can't wait to see the new MPUV. Is there anything that you're just dying to see this Invictus?
I mean, the NURSA for sure. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've always been the MPUV evangelist. Many people blame me for crowning the MPUV the best in show that one year. I was partially responsible for that.
Oh, it's your fault.
Mobilizing. Okay. Yeah, it's partially my fault because to be fair, it was Redlear's fault. And then one year he tried to get it done and he almost got it done. And then the next year I thought it would be funny. So I started rallying people in captain's table being like, hey, we're going to do the MPUV this year. And odd people were like, yeah, let's do this. And then what I didn't know is that those people then went to other people and said the same thing. And so that when it started happening, what happened was the content creators said, hey, let's do this. And then everybody else thought it was great. And they started forming groups to help out. And so when the rest of the community was like, where is this coming from? It's like, well, we kind of started a grassroots movement 6 months ago to get this done. And we just sort of surprised you out of nowhere. The MPUV offensive just popping out of the walls like, ha! Surprise candidate. And so ever since then, I've been saying I love our short Orange King. Long may the tough little things reign as the true ruler of all of the verse. Yeah. And now it has its nice utility. It's now blue and it has a utility crown on it with its tractor beams. So I'm really looking forward to the
little unicorn,
the MPUV. Yeah,
unicorn horn.
It's got 2 tractor beams apparently. So I'm like, very good. Now
exciting.
It'll actually get used. I think people will actually like it because you can actually use it for moving stuff. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it was funny. So it's your fault that the Carrack doesn't win every single Best in Show. Is that your fault?
to be fair, I think it won the show directly after that. It won.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think the Carrack has won like 3 out of the 5 or 2 out of the 5. Yeah. It's something ridiculous. But yeah, there's like random MPUV right in the middle of that. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, what? Who's flying a non-quantum jumpable? If that's a ship, if that's a name. Ship. Anyways, so much to talk about with the MPUV. Starjump Grim, who's on last week's episode, actually had a really good call out. It's not the way it's playing out now that we know from the PTU, but we are introducing vehicular modularity. And like, how awesome would it be if the MPUV just became the skeleton and you could replace the innards with whatever module, right? The medical module, the cargo module, the personnel module. That's not the case. It's not happening. Like, there's an actual version that you will be seeing in the next couple of days. But what a brilliant idea. I thought that'd be one way to introduce modularity in such a very versatile ship. So
to be fair, I do think that's going to be the next. We'll know more next week as they start doing their conversations about stuff. But I would almost kind of bet that CIG will make the second ship in the verse that's modular the MPUV, because it's already there. They already have it ready to go. They've already made it because it's in squadron, so it's a squadron ship, just like Retaliator, and all those ships are already out and ready to go. So it wouldn't be nearly as hard of work to just have you attach and detach those different modules compared to the Retaliator.
Well, the Idris comes with an MPUV, right? Like one.
All big ships do. The Idris.
So how awesome would it be
Javelin,
how awesome would it be to have like the skeleton and be whatever whatever module version of the MPUV on your Idris. Like, that makes sense to me, and not just dedicate it to one version. So, and speaking of which, here's the last poll. It bleeds perfectly into what we were just talking about. But this morning I asked for Inside Star Citizen. We knew that they were going to be covering the Saber Raven Gold Standard, the Saber Firebird, and the Ursa Medevac, which the community has lovingly called the NURSA. I think it's brilliant. They should just own it and go with it. The NURSA won. I mean, easily.
Yeah.
You know, over 1,000 views, 115 votes. 61.4% say the Ursa Medevac was the most interesting. Saber Firebird right behind it with 27.2%, and then the very exclusive, no one owns, the Saber Raven entering the gold standard. So, did you have the chance to watch Inside Star Citizen today?
Yes, I did.
Any reactions to that? Anything that stood out to you that you would want to call out?
It did sound like the Raven. They want to start selling the Raven. Honestly,
It did.
They sounded like they wanted to start selling it. Which, we'll see if that happens, because it seems like they still have that agreement with Intel. For a lot of people who don't know, both the Omega and the Raven were sold with contracts exclusive to AMD with the Omega and Intel with the Raven, and as far as I know, those contracts are still holding up. So, like, you can only get those ships if you have those specific things. I think the Omega was with an AMD graphics card, which can't even run Star Citizen anymore.
It's good.
Yeah, it's so
perfect.
Weird. And of course, like, they've done nothing with it. Like, AMD's nothing, and Intel barely does anything with their like, oh yeah, we have this thing sitting around, we should probably do something with it. But so yeah, but I that's the thing that kind of pulled off of it. And of course, there's a big question about medical, which is the big one, because it's not just that we're getting the NURSA, which is awesome, but we're getting medical changes, which I think has caused some controversy.
So let's just get into that real quick.
Yeah.
Wasn't prepared, clearly. I already have it up.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's great. So the NURSA, or the Ursa Medevac, with it came this feature and gameplay update. You're looking at it on my screen for those of you on YouTube, but I'm going to read this verbatim, word for word. That's what that means. So there's no confusion, but I would love to hear, Paul, your reaction to this. I have my reaction to this. It'd be interesting to see if we align here, but here we go. Medical bed respawn update. With the release of 323.1, so tomorrow, we wanted to provide players with a less brutal experience when getting back into action. To help with this, we are making all medical bed tiers capable of being set as a regen location. The range at which you will be able to respawn in them will depend on their size class. So a tier 3 medical bed will allow respawning up to 20 kilometers away. Tier 2 medical beds, which previously allowed respawning up to 20 kilometers, will now allow respawning up to 50 kilometers away. These current values for respawn distance will be monitored for balance and will be adjusted if needed. Healing capabilities for all beds will remain the same, and players respawning will do so without their equipment they dropped on death, and will have to be prepared with extra stored or survive to go back and reloot their corpse. You're the guest on this podcast. I'm gonna let you go first, but man, there is some drama.
Oh yeah,
on social media about this medical bed respawn. So tell us a little about the drama. Tell us a little about what your org or your community is talking about, and your overall reactions.
So, for those of you who may not understand this, may just like, well, why is this a problem? You can now use your tier 3 beds to respawn. That's great, isn't it? The concerns that a lot of people have, and this has been the discussion that's been happening in my community, especially with a lot of people like Tree, who's a friend of both of us, and who's very into medical, and actually that's his job is medical. He does a medevac, like helicopter medevac is his job as a paramedic. He's very passionate about this sort of thing, and he's concerned, and I think a lot of people are concerned, what this is going to do is going to reduce or remove the requirement for many people to seek medical attention, because you just buy an Ursa, you drive it up to a location, you set your respawn there, and then you go into a bunker, you kill a bunch of people. If you die, oh well, regen, go back in and keep doing it. You don't have to it kind of removes the sting of death a little bit too much, to the point where you're never going to have to really worry about, if you're prepared enough, you're never going to have to worry about respawning and having to go get your stuff back and all that kind of stuff. It kind of removes a lot of that threat.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of accusations, and I don't think it's necessarily true, but I do think that CIG often has this ability of pushing forward so hard on the technical side that they don't see the optics and how things look.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people see this and go, oh, so CIG is just trying to sell nurses because they know that they're going to release this update, and now the Nursa becomes a super important part of people's game experiences, and it's a nice compact shipped vehicle that you can put in a lot of different places. So yeah, give me $55 for my give me $55 for this gameplay mechanic, and then they feel like they're just going to revert it later. So it's just a cash grab. I don't think it's the case. I do think, honestly, and this is going to sound a little weird, I am not necessarily against this, because I also have a feeling I know where CIG is going with this. And they haven't explicitly stated this, but with the 4.0 roadmap, it kind of goes in that direction, which is resources. And this is, again, ties back to my understanding of the lore, is that regen is something they introduced fairly recently in the game and in the universe. It's only been around for about 4 years now in lore, but as a result, it's only been very recent in their understanding of how regen was supposed to work in terms of gameplay mechanics is fairly recent.
Yeah.
And one of the things they talk about is in the lore is Bioticorp, the company that makes the character creator that we have, which is called Calliope. That they also make something called regen serum. And when you die, your basically soul, for lack of a better word, is imprinted on a data storage device called an Ibrahim sphere. And when you when you respawn, you're actually being reprinted 3D printer style with this serum at a medbed. And the medbed is an auto dock, so it's like a robot that actually knows how to do everything. And you just kind of are like rebuilt. What is that movie? Fifth Element style. Kind of things. Yeah. So the thing is that what that means is that there is a physical resource used to reprint the human body. So you're probably going to have that resource as part of the thing. So the reason why they're saying, oh, we're doing it tier 3 is because they're getting people used to it, because they wanted to do this. And they're like, hey, this is a neat little, let's do it here because we got time for it. Because even Zach Pierce, I can't remember how to say his name. He went on and talked a little bit about it, saying that, yeah, we've actually been sitting on this change for a while now. We didn't think the game was ready yet. And they decided to pull the trigger because they think it's a good time for it. I think the reason why they're pulling the trigger now is because resources are in 4.0, so they'll start adding resources as a requirement for regen, which then limits the ability. So it's not just, oh, I can just infinitely respawn. It's like, no, here's a consequence. You need to have the right resources to be able to use this. Then you only have a certain number of lives. Yeah. With that. So
super interesting. Yeah, I've got a lot of friends in med runners. And if you're unfamiliar with that org, you're listening, watching, unfamiliar with them, they have done a phenomenal job outside of the game on how to request medical aid and whatnot. And yeah, this change basically renders that useless for the interim, as of right now, to everything that Paul just called out. So I'm aligned with you. I'm glad you kind of pivoted and said, like, you see where this is going, because I thought along the same vein. I was like, I didn't say resources, but there's got to be another way. 2954, it's not just like hitting the restart button. There's got to be something that is cost, like some sort of expenditure. I don't know if it's permanent damage. Some games do permanent damage. I don't know what that looks like. I don't even want to get down that conversation because that's a murky one. But there's just so many doors that this opens up. And I think it actually is kind of more realistic. If you have regen, let's fast forward 930 years from now. If you have regen, it kind of makes sense that you should be able to deploy like an Ursa medevac or a C8R and be able to regen where you put the damn ship. Like, that kind of makes sense to me, right? So now let's make it work. I just think we need to adopt, we need to evolve and change our medical game loop to adapt to it. So it's just a heated debate. Go into social media on any platform and you're going to see people kind of bitching about it, and everything's merited, in my opinion. Everything's merited. If you're happy about it, if you're sad about it, I'm not going to argue with you. It's a very good debate.
All I'll say in my experience is somebody who's been open about that they want to be a smuggler in the game, and that smuggling is a very important mechanic. CIG has done this yo-yo before, where they're like, here's a little bit of smuggling gameplay. It's like, oh, right, great. I can actually start doing some content and enjoy myself. And then 2 patches later, they've taken that away. And it's like, well, I was playing. Where game, please. And then you sit there for a year doing nothing, and then they bring it back, and you're like, oh, this is just going to happen again. And I feel for people who are like that, and I'm like, this sucks. But it feels like it's setting the bone is broken, and they're setting the bone, and it's going to suck popping the bone back into place. It's going to hurt and it's going to stink because your gameplay is completely gone. But in the long term, it'll add depth to the gameplay, I think. But
rip the Band-Aid off. Make the changes now before 4.0, because that's when everybody else is going to be joining, I think, the Star Citizen community. But okay, let's get going. So we're just now an hour and a half into the podcast. We're just now into This Week in Star Citizen. So I think we can do an abbreviated version of this. So last Friday, Alpha 323 dropped. We've already talked about most of this. I do want to show you the website. I'll have the links in show notes if you want to go check it out yourself. Otherwise, RSI website, cute little video that shows some aliens and stuff. We've already talked about DCs. This is my abridged version. Talked about DCs. Character creator, do you have any responses on character creator? Are you happy with it? Do you think it's deep enough?
I think it's a good step. I'd love to see full-blown character changing with changing your body morph a little bit here and there.
Fair.
I understand that. I do think CIG wants to do that direction, but I also think just like this, they're going to have limitations. One little cool thing is we had the first real mod for Star Citizen, which came from the character creator.
We did.
And unfortunately, in 3.23.1, it's completely blocked. It's been removed. It's so you can't do it. But for those who don't know, you could change. There was a mod that allowed you to change the skin color to whatever color you wanted to. So people were making Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I saw that.
Admiral Thrawn from Star Wars and all sorts of things. So it definitely shows the flexibility of it. But I do think it's a good step. And even 4.0, they're going to add even more heads and more hair and more
tattoos, piercings.
Tattoos and piercings. I think at least piercings, if not tattoos as well. It's coming in 4.0 as well. So it's a good start. It's a good step towards the right direction.
Man, you give gamers a little bit of leeway, and gamers will be gamers, man. They're gonna have a field day with it. So I agree. I love the beards. I love being able to change colors. And I loved the save functionality, because I was very heavy in EPTU, and every day there was a new build. And so it was very convenient to just load from a previous creation. That was awesome. So I think they're headed in the right direction for sure. I am not going to ask you about master modes. I'm done with that conversation, dude.
All I will say with master modes is it is part one of a many-part series of changes. I think that people need to kind of give it some time. And, sometimes CIG is going to go in directions that you don't like. And I've done that myself. We had that conversation just now with medical. Sometimes it happens. And you either go, okay, this is where it's going, because this is the gameplay that CIG wants to make, or you don't. Either way, there's nothing. You can't really get into too depth about it, because I'm not really a super in-depth PvP combat person, so I can't really go into too much depth about it. So
and I guess the sentiment or the spirit of my response to this, every gaming community has its dark corners. It has its, there are some just, I don't know. I don't want to say bad. There are some just very dark corners of the Star Citizen community, and Master Modes brought it out. Like you've got hate or love, and there's no real in between. It's a volatile conversation. All to say, 100% agreement with Paul. Look, they had to break the bone, put a splint in. They're trying to fix the actual gameplay of flight. Now, my one response to this is in atmosphere. I love that momentum matters. Like the first time I was in a dogfight and I had to barrel roll or I had to bank in atmosphere, it felt completely different, but it felt natural. It felt like how it was supposed to feel in atmosphere. So I love that they're kind of getting to like, it feels different to fly in Atmo as it does in space, and it should be that way. Now we can argue about the cursors and how arcade-ish it looks, and this is not this podcast. Go listen to some other podcasts. I don't care. I'm enjoying the shit out of it. But like, it's just so, like I said, it's a volatile conversation, one that I'm not really married into one way or the other. It's something that you need to know as a listener or a viewer. So go dive into that rabbit hole if you want to. EVA, probably my favorite addition in 323. Going into Security Post Gundo or really anywhere outside in space, this has been a flawless execution. Game changing in every type of loop. Piracy is now like legitimately fun because it's easy to board other ships. How does EVA change the game for you? Any reactions there?
It's so smooth. It 100%. Is so smooth. It is actually disconcertingly smooth because I'm used to like jumping out and just hovering there for a moment and then as you're like everything kicks on. It's like it felt more like the clunk actually kind of felt kind of real, you know, like how it would. But now it's just like you step out and it's seamlessly like.
Yeah,
like it's just so smooth. I'm like, this is super cinematic. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's nice. It's great. It's good. It really sells the space experience, I think.
Yes. So. Yeah, I'm still getting used to your momentum doesn't stop until you tell it to. So like as you thrust forward, you have to thrust back or you're gonna run into walls. So like the hands come up, like, you know what I mean? Like they'll come up towards the platform, like, oh, I'm about to hit something. So I have to get used to that. There are a couple of changes, but overall phenomenal experience. Let's keep going. FPS. You talked about looting, that being a dynamic. I've seen a couple of those dynamics as well, kind of being a little difficult, but I love going up to a carcass and going into the loot screen and being able to take the muzzle flash off of the enemy's weapon and plug it onto my rifle without leaving this menu and having to click and drag. And this is brilliant. Anything about the loot screen other than the bugs you mentioned? Anything that you want to call out with the loot screen?
Well, like there's a lot. Like
there's a lot. Yeah.
The one you have shown on screen right now is actually a secondary screen that you have to click a different button to get access to, which is I didn't know about until last night. I've been playing this game for like a month for this, and it's like there's an entirely different screen. In fact, you can even go back to the original inventory screen if you want to, entirely by bypassing it. But it's smooth, it's nice, it really works. It feels good and smooth. It's just good. It's just good.
Yeah.
And of course the map.
Oh, well, the map is, I didn't realize that would be the next scene. But dude, the star map, it still has its issues. Like, it'll plot me through a planet and say it's obstructed. Like, I thought that was the whole point of the new system, to fix that. So it's got some bumps to get over, but infinitely better than what we were with a week ago. Are you yawning? Are you done with?
I might be a little tired.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
I'm good. I'm
kidding. It was hilarious. I just had to call it out.
To be fair, I yawn like it's just something that happens in my stream all the time.
You're good, man.
It'll be like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I'll start yawning, and people are like, "Paul, it's 2. Why are you yawning?" It's like, because that's just what my body does. Okay, don't get mad at me. Please stop yelling.
Yeah, you're a teacher. You don't have regular sleep cycles. I get that. No. Arena Commander, water is sexy. Oh, dude, the water. I have to stop. Water is freaking phenomenal. So there is in Arena Commander. I took the pulse out to go. We'll talk about that next. Took the pulse out, and the first racing level I was on was a water level. I had probably some of the most fun in racing ever on that map because it was just beautiful. It was gorgeous. Got some good screenshots, some good videos, but no other game is doing it at this level. So like you look at Red Dead Redemption, you look at Grand Theft Auto, Cyberpunk. There was a whole video against Starfield a couple of months ago because Starfield doesn't do this. But, you get a couple of little splashes and ripples or whatever, but Star Citizen, in my opinion, nailed this. Like you can take VTOL, take a Cutlass Black, turn on VTOL where the thrusters are straight up and down, go down towards water, and you will see how that affects the water. Ripples, vaporizing, like the smoke or the little steam that comes off the surface of the water. This is a tremendous update. Last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up for Paul.
No.
Under the water, like you can actually, if you have a full suit on, you can walk underwater. I did this on Microtech. So this world opens up, and again, I told Space Tomato this a couple episodes ago. If they have an underwater planet, I'm never playing it. I'm not going there. I have thalassophobia. It ain't happening. But like you can go underwater and walk underwater, and it's a whole new experience with that type of buoyancy and what you would expect. So they nailed the water engine. So reactions to the water and the environment, what are your thoughts? Because we also had clouds too, right? We had a cloud update. Yeah.
Cloud update and a lighting update. It's all part of this.
Incredible.
When I saw it at CitizenCon, I was like, okay, cool. A year away.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't expecting like, oh yeah, by the way, here like 4 months later, here you go.
Right.
It is. I don't really think there's any game that does like this. I can't think of a game that does dynamic water changes like this.
Not like this.
Outside of something like Sea of Thieves, but Sea of Thieves is like that is the entire game is water. Yeah. And like this is a space game that has these sorts of like changes to it.
Yeah.
And this isn't like CIG going, oh yes, this is here you go, we're done, because this is the Planetech team.
That's right.
They're going to spend the next multiple years taking this and making it better and improve it more. And there's still some problems. Like I think the water is a little too off at times in terms of like doesn't quite look natural. It hits that uncanny valley.
Yeah.
But I think that is a temporary thing where it's like they even showed in this video, it kind of looks like oil almost rather than water, so it's a little bit too viscousy or too sticky. But
you're such a teacher. Viscosity. Good Lord.
I don't even know if that's the right word for it. I'm just using fancy words.
Such a teacher.
But yeah, so it's gorgeous. The lighting changes alone has completely changed how Star Citizen looks, and it's only going to get better from here. So it was great.
Yeah. Tremendous. So. Yeah. Don't put me underwater. I'm going to freak the F out. So not happening. Probably one of the last things, there's like 2 more things left. So you had the Pulse come out. I'll ask you about that in a second, like its own little segment. We'll take 2 or 3 minutes to talk about it. This last piece, FPS combat. Listeners to this podcast, viewers on YouTube know where I stand on this dynamic crosshair and what. I'm not going to bore you with another opinion, but I would love to hear yours. Your thoughts on the FPS updates. Again, we talked, a dynamic crosshair, the lens refractor or whatever you want to call that, but the dynamic scopes and what that looks like. Just overall FPS experience. Have you done it a lot with like Merc missions or bounty missions? Have you seen a difference? What's your reaction to FPS?
Dynamic crosshair is my idea of the dynamic crosshair. I'm just confused by it. I just don't know why it exists.
100%. I
understand why it exists. I just it's one of those kind of like why are you around? But like the backpack reload's okay. The ammo pulling's fine. It's both simplifying but also tightening up a lot of the gunplay, which is good. It really was needed.
Yeah.
Star Citizen's was not in a good position for the gunplay, and the actual teams that they brought together to work on this, it feels like they actually care.
Yeah.
And they're trying to take with what they have and make it work. And of course, this is like everything. It's not the end. They're going to keep working on it and moving it around.
Yeah, it's a good step. I agree with you.
Yeah. But I say it's a good step, and it's going to move moving forward. It's going to get better. And as we get more things like Death of a Spaceman and better medical stuff, and like as armor becomes more specialized, what you can do.
Yeah.
and all those sorts of new weapons and all those sorts of things. We'll start to see the fruits of this labor. This is part one of a many parts process. So
just like with master modes and everything else.
Yeah.
But 1.0 is right around the corner, Paul.
Well, I mean, I think the point of this, my same point with master modes with this was just like, there are other things that need to be put in, but they have to start somewhere. You can't just drop everything at once. Sometimes you just got to put it in. And this is what it is. They're putting this in. It's like, this is going to change how you play, but it's better than it was before. Maybe not the best, and there's definitely other things that need to be put in, but it's good.
Yep.
So it's a good start. Yep. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll say it anyways. I'll say it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's noise. It's noise right now. The dynamic crosshair, I'm with you. It doesn't make sense. I see it moving around on my screen, and like, I guess it's to improve hip fire. I don't know. I'm a did serve in the military. Like, I have a hard time breaking. This is the one thing. I'm in a space game 900 years in the future. This is the one thing I can't break in my mind. Is just like the lens play, how they're doing the parallax, dynamic zooming and all that crap. Like, I just can't do it. So right now, FPS for me is kind of noisy. It doesn't feel natural still, but I do agree that it's laying a groundwork for it to become more robust and maybe a little bit more realistic. But now we have to have the debate, not literally you and me right now, but now we have to have the debate, like, realism versus fun in game. Okay. Yeah. So we have to give up some of that, right? In order to have a game that's functioning for the other 99% of the gamers.
And I'll leave it with this, is that Star Citizen is not a game in a vacuum. As you said at the very beginning, like, up to this point, Star Citizen felt like 4 different studios making a game and then making different parts of the game and then just trying to, like, jerry-rig them together to create an experience. And it didn't always work. And this is the first time it feels like, no, all of them are on the same page and they're working on the same thing.
Yes.
And, when you say FPS, people who are FPS gamers go, okay, cool, FPS. I've played, Rainbow Six Siege or Arma or Tarkov or whatever. Like I know how to play what a shooter is. I know what a shooter is. I know all the elements of it. I'm here for that.
Yeah.
But then those people forget, like, there's also mining and salvage and cargo and space flight and vehicles and medical. And it's so, like, there's no, everything's, you can't do anything in a vacuum. It's all connected. And I think I think CIG is both insane and in their happy zone. But the fact that they're looking at this and going, we're going to take all of these different genres, we're going to throw them together in this giant melting pot and make something work out of it. It's like, you are insane. That is nuts. I don't know how you do that. I
am so glad you brought that up. I am so happy right now because I can't. So as an adult, I'll just say 40. I don't have a lot of time to game. I can't sit down for 2 hours, 3 hours. And so my gaming sessions are like 30 minutes, maybe an hour tops. And I have so much ADD when I jump in. I think I want to do delivery missions, but I'll get out of my bed, I'll walk to the kiosk and see, oh, I forgot I have an F7A Mark II. I kind of want to do bounties now. And like I cannot stay on a path in this game for 30 minutes. And so I do my bounty. I'm like, man, I really want to do delivery missions. So it takes me 30 minutes to get back to the station and replace with a Rambler or something. But dude, like, this game has literally every facet of life that you could possibly imagine. And that sucks for somebody like me. It sucks because I'm like, I don't know what to do with my 30 minutes. And speaking of kind of a ADD mindset of what Star Citizen even is, we have a racing vehicle that just released as well with 323 called the Mirai Pulse. Don't need to go into a huge deep dive here, but 2 vehicles, 1 base that has a Gatling gun, kind of the mini gun from Fallout, right? So you have the base that's over here on the left, and then you've got this sweet LX, which is their BMW racing version of the bike. So rather than, again, deep diving, I'll scroll through this in the background. But Paul, did you end up buying one or both? Or what are your thoughts on yet another Gravlev vehicle before Invictus Launch Week?
I haven't purchased it. I understand why they're doing Gravlev, because it works. They have it, and it's interesting. There's a lot of, like, reasons for it. And there's obviously heavy Capsule Corp from Dragon Ball Z, or like in 80s and 90s anime, and like cyberpunk vibes with it.
Yeah,
it's very 80s cyberpunk, that kind of let's take what we have now but make it hover.
That's right.
And it's neat and unique in that kind of sense. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who do like motorcycles who kind of have their own kind of opinions on it. It's got a lot of different vibes to it. The thing that really stands out to me though is its size. It is so small.
It is.
It is so compact, and that's the only thing that I can sit here and go, yes, good move. I like the direction you're going, CIG. Because this is exactly what we need going forward. Is if CIG is going more ground vehicles, you need a ground vehicle that can fit inside of an Avenger Titan.
Yeah.
And this thing can fit inside of an Aurora. If it fits inside of Aurora, it's like, bravo, CIG. This is exactly what I was hoping for. This is exactly what we need, because you need to introduce people into the ground gameplay. And what better than an 80s cyberpunk inspired little naked bike or crotch rocket or whatever you want to call this thing. It's like that sort of thing. So
I agree with you. I ended up putting in, my listeners are going to give me hell for this because I don't like Drake, not until the Kraken comes out. So I was flying my Cutter Rambler, because I unfortunately think that's probably the best everydayer in this current moment. So you have the Rambler. This actually fits in the back little compartment of the Cutter Rambler, so it's a great 1-2 punch. However, I found out that the turrets on a bunker treat this as a ship because it hovers. So if you fly it in thinking that you're gonna take out the last click to not get shot at from the bunker turret, you're still going to get shot at while flying this in towards the bunker, and I'm assuming it's because it thinks that you're a flying ship. So I don't know if that needs to get fixed or if that's what is expected, but the kind of selling point of getting the last click of the way without having to piss off a turret, well, no, that's not my experience up to this point. But taking this into a bunker and treating it like a Fallout suit, like the minigun Fallout suit, is hilarious. It is hilarious. A lot of fun was had. So,
what I will say is I understand this frustration people have, which is like, this is great, but where's my Ranger? And it's I get that. I understand that. And I know people, but for me, it's like, this is the first kind of I understand where this was coming from, and the desire behind it was, it's cool, it's small, but also it's actually good for players.
It is.
And so if you're somebody who's like, I don't like this, be like, think about it as a new player. This is something for a new player experience, for someone who wants to have that sort of, I get a little ground vehicle to fly around in and that kind of stuff. But actually, to answer the question about I think that is 100% what is that is 100% what they're going to intended, where they can target your ground vehicles, because like I said,
it should
in about probably before the end of this year, you're not just going to have to deal with turrets. You're going to have to deal with a tank rolling up and shooting at you while you're driving, or someone shooting at you with a railgun as you're approaching. So
worms from Dune are going to come out of nowhere and just eat your ship up. All right, let's do this. All right, there's a C2 Hercules lore article. Go read it.
Well, I will say one thing about the C2.
Please go ahead.
Very, very simpler. The article's been out for a very long time. It's been in Jump Point for a while. But if you are a Crusader fan, read it.
It's good.
If you like Crusader ships, read it. It gives you a lot of insight into where the Hercules came from, the history behind Crusader Industries, what their design philosophy, how they function, what CIG is going for with ships, and what the final version of the Crusader is going to look like. That sort of stuff. It's an enlightening read if you want to know a little bit more about, maybe if you have a Hercules, you're like, oh, okay, that's where this comes from. So
100%. And I've got the lore person on, and I'm skipping lore. I know that's crazy, right?
We did talk a lot about earlier, so it's fine.
Yeah, we did. I'm taking that podcaster host, leniency here and just moving forward. It is a good article, but by all means, it absolutely kind of hints at the future of Crusader and the future of ships. So please go read it. Roadmap roundup. Let's do roadmap roundup, and then we'll end with Invictus Launch Week. I think that's a pretty good 1-2 punch to wrap us up. All right. I don't even know how I want to do this. So on Wednesday, they released every 2 weeks, the bi-weekly cadence, they released the roadmap roundup with a roadmap update, and they just decided to drop this freaking bomb on everybody. I mean, no one saw this coming. It's the next patch, guys. The next patch is 4.0. There will not be a 3.24. It will go from 3.23 dot whatever straight into 4.0, and that is huge. Before I give the floor over to Paul, my one response to this, I don't think I can put in words how important it is that 4.0 is now in a release view. Mm-hmm. It is a commitment that's beyond just, hey, we're going to launch 4.0 in the next couple weeks. They are literally in release view for Q3 of this year. So before SitCon, we will have 4.0, and that is a tremendous step for Star Citizen. So Paul, as my guest, how do you want to do this? You want to go like line by line and like, I mean, there's just so much to cover. What stood out to you?
What I will do is I'm going to take a look at it on my side too. And what I'm going to do is actually this is something I did with 3.23 as well. It's 3.23 because the reality is when you're looking at the release view for some of these things, or for some of these patches, what you actually say, all these things are look at this huge list. CIG has learned that if you have a gigantic list of features, people will get hyped and excited. Mm-hmm. But if you have individual things, they won't be as excited. And let's look at like Pyro, for instance, right? You see this list: Pyro 1, Pyro 2, Pyro 3, Pyro 4, Pyro 5, all of Terminate, Pyro 6, and then all of the moons of Pyro 5. And it's like, wow, look at that list. That's Pyro. Yeah. Like, that's all it is. It's just Pyro. I say just Pyro as if like, oh, it's not it's a big deal, but like, it's Pyro. It's a big deal that they're dropping it all at once. Yeah. But at the same time, they could have either just said new system, Pyro, all its planets, all its moons. Yeah. Because they could have said, but they dropped each individual one in there, which, also may hint at something like they could leave, because the important thing to remember about this patch is that the important part that CIG wants to get out for 4.0 is server meshing and Pyro. They've always said that those are the two things that are 4.0. Like, if they get those two things in, is what 4.0 is going to be about. Yeah. And so anything else that you see on this list can be axed. Yeah. But what I'll do is go through real quickly and just kind of put some of these things together. The 15 locations, of those 15 locations, all of them are Pyro. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's 15 locations could just be one. Pyro 1, Pyro 2, Pyro 3, 4, 5, 6, the moons, and then jump points, colonialism, Pyro space stations. So those are all important, but that's basically Pyro. Yeah, we're getting. Correct. So that's one real thing, and I don't think, similar with 3.23, if jump points doesn't make it in, Pyro's gone, kind of thing. That's obviously not going to happen, because that's the whole point of 4.0. But so there are going to be a couple of these things in there, like gameplay, fire hazard, and then engineering, life support. All of those are the same resource system. They're the life support resource system, the room system. That's
which is huge. Yeah,
it's a huge portion. Yeah, but it's kind of like how when CIG put in the HUD elements for 3.23, it wasn't just HUD update. It was map, mobiGlas, visor update. It was a bunch of things, but it was really just one thing. 'Cause it's all one feature that just has different kind of tendrils that we actually see. Yeah, which are those changes. And speaking of that, that's the same thing down here with I think where was that? Was it under? There's one part where they talk about like the updates to displays. The
MFD rework and new displays.
Yeah, MFD rework and new displays.
Yeah.
Which is like that. That's just, we're going to see more of that coming in too. Like
Yeah.
they could have easily brought that into MFD rework, new HUD. Like it's two separate things, but they kind of put them into one. But yeah.
Sure.
So to take the hype thrusters back at least like a quarter, what we see is like 40 things. It's really 6.
Sure.
But all of those things are huge,
very important,
massive changes that are vital to the change of Star Citizen. And it's coming before the end of the year.
Right.
It's finally going to be coming. And I do want to also emphasize that any of these things still could get cut if they're not directly pyro or jump points.
Yeah.
I love the boy who's coming. Here comes the boy. The boy, here he comes. He is here. The Kazi Grazer. I love that.
Yep. The cow.
But the cow could still get cut. It still could not make it for whatever reason.
Not that
Fire could not make it, But yeah.
But that's huge though, right? So you have a charge, drain, multi-tool updates. Like these are functions that could easily be put in the game. You already have a multi-tool. Now it can charge and drain things. Great. But the fire extinguisher, fire hazard, that's something we saw at SitCon last year, right? We saw the reclaimer.
Yeah, they're playing on fire. And they had the...
So that's coming. Super sexy, right? The cow. Okay.
Space cow.
I don't know, man. Everybody's super excited about it. Like, I want the flying whales. Like, that's what I want.
Well, see, what I want is even deeper cut. I want the tiny little trash eating Hindenburgs. The jellyfish, that the scary jellyfish that we saw in like the 2017 CitizenCon video, that live on Hurston, and they eat garbage, and they propel themselves by pooping, not pooping, by farting.
Love it.
And they're entirely filled with hydrogen. So you shoot them with an incendiary round, they will go pop, and they cluster together. So one pops and sends flaming chunks out. It's going to ignite the other ones, and they're all going to pop. And I love that, because I want to see that in game, for just the clear out this area, which has got these stinky rats everywhere, these stinky floaty rats everywhere that explode. Yeah. And somebody goes, "Oh, I'm going to bring an incendiary around, and this is going to be funny." And just watching like the chain reaction go all over the place. But yeah, I agree. I'm also there with the storm walls, the space whales, and then of course the whip crabs. Bring me the collection of rock shaped crabs which gather together in giant hordes and are the size of a 2-story building. Give me that experience, CIG.
I love it though. Like the more fauna, the more skeletons that they build out, the more that they can duplicate and create more, fauna with the same skeleton. Like this is great. Yeah. In SitCon, the future of gaming video that became very popular, Asmongold and Dr. Disrespect did videos on them. Like that storm wall, that space whale scene to this day is one of my favorite gaming scenes of all time. I had no idea it was coming. Right, you see the MSR in Crusader, and you're like, okay, cool, that's really pretty. And a freaking whale like appears behind it. Like, I can't wait for that kind of immersion. It's gonna scare the crap out of me the first time it happens. Right, you're coming into Atmo, and there's clouds, and all of a sudden you're face to face with a whale. Can't wait. After shitting myself, can't wait. The one thing I will call out, they do specify the RSI Zeus Mark II. So for those of you in my org, very specifically, who are hellbent that the Zeus is coming out tomorrow, probably not going to happen if you see it right here for 4.0. So
yeah, sadly, we're probably not going to see a surprise the Zeus Mark, but yeah, it's good. Like the 4.0, like it's huge. I have to do a video on it myself at some point, but I would say it's definitely a big milestone, and it really shows that CIG's really pumping on all cylinders, and there is no stop button. CIG's ripped the brakes out, and it's full speed ahead. We're come hell or high water, this game's going to be done.
So on that note, I'm doing this for Groza and a couple of others in my org. But on that note, let's just have the very explicit conversation. For 323.1, so tomorrow, we're going to be getting the gold standard of the Retaliator and vehicle modularity. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I actually don't want to talk about the Retaliator. There are so many questions about the Galaxy. So we see the Polaris. I don't know how to pronounce it. We see it as a flyby. We see it on display on the showroom floor. How close are we to the Galaxy? My org is crying out for it, rightfully so. It's going to be a phenomenal ship that is waiting on vehicle modularity. Well, now it's here as of tomorrow. Let's get into our little styrofoam, our little tinfoil hats, and let's talk about the Galaxy for a couple of seconds. What are your thoughts on the Galaxy?
I think it's soon. I think it's after Polaris, and I think the Polaris is going to be released probably, like almost assuredly. The Polaris is coming out. This by Invictus, or not Invictus, IE by Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, 2953.
It's like a sitcom surprise, you think? Like a sitcom surprise?
Sitcom.
Yeah.
I think 4.0. Almost certainly it's 4.0, because the way it's been talked about in the roadmap and the way that the fact they're doing the externals, like they're working on the internals, but their internals are in gray box. Yeah. They're in gray box now, which means that you're looking at maybe 3-6 months, and 3-6 months is where 4.0 is. So if not 4.0, then maybe like 4.1. And I also think that they're probably going to get done before they actually have a patch for it. So as a result, I think the next thing they do after that is the Galaxy. And all of the parts for the Galaxy that should exist or need to be or will be there. Yeah. And the two big ones that they can add in right away is medical and cargo.
Cargo, yeah.
And I mean, let's look at the other thing, base building. It's the thing that's going to be coming in. I think that's going to define the 4.0 and 1.0 pad. The 4.0 branch and the 1.0 release is going to be base building.
Yeah.
Whereas like server meshing and Pyro was 4.0, was like the end of 3.0 from the beginning of 4.0. I think base building is going to be that definitive. We're done with the alpha testing, and now we're moving into whatever releases that CIG's defining.
Yeah, whatever they're calling it.
And we know that there's going to be a crafting module for the Galaxy. So I think the Galaxy is, if not by the end of this year, at the very least, we will start to see it in active production before the end of this year.
Oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. I know you're going to need a crew to fly it, but I'm very sure that that's probably going to be my everydayer. I think it's sexy. Like aesthetically, it's an amazing looking ship. With it being module, it kind of fits in whatever mood you're in. But that seems like a really good small team. Like it's not an org ship necessarily, but it'd be a really great small team platoon sized element. I can't wait. I get so excited to talk about the Galaxy. But yeah, there's a lot of hype, and when people saw that vehicle modularity, of course they thought MPUV, of course the Retaliator, as that would be the first one, as CIG said, and now the next one's Galaxy. Like, okay, how do we talk about this? How do we expect? So keep your tinfoil hat on just for a couple more seconds. We're actually going to wrap up the podcast because the last thing is Invictus Launch Week, and which is what we called this damn episode. But
to be fair, there's been a lot of stuff. So
yes, inadvertently we've talked about everything to expect in the next couple of days. So in 15 hours and 34 minutes, you see on the screen, we will be having the day one RSI. We'll be having day one of Fleet Week in ArcCorp. So there's a lot to discuss here. I think we talked about most of it. Not going to show you all the video. Here's the timeline. This is more just reported than news, Paul, but good Lord. May 17th and 18th, we have RSI Origin, Consolidated Outland, and Argo. 19th and 20th, we have the Misk Crusader, Tumbril, and Mirai. May 21 through 22, we have the Aegis Dynamics. I still am sad that we're not going to get the Warhammer, right? The Javelin, but whatever, life goes on. Here's your day, right? Anvil Aerospace, May 23rd through 24th, and then no one cares about DefenseCon.
I care.
So, totally kidding. And then May 27th, 28th, and 29th is the finale, where they'll say, hey, you've been looking at the Polaris for several days. Now we're going to release it, and everybody will fly the Polaris. So
yeah, 100%. 100% going to happen. Now that we've said it, we've wished it into existence. The Edge is going to have it done.
So before, well, I guess one more point of news, and then I'll end on one question. So one more point of news: we did today get the Invictus Launch Week schedule for the manufacturer. It does list off a bunch of ships. That's great. But the note here that I wanted to pull out, did I include it here? Stand by. I think it's in the FAQ. Okay, so if you're watching YouTube, I just made you nauseous. Let's go to the FAQ. The FAQ has, I just want to go through the limited hull schedule. So for those of you listening, here it is. So those of you listening on podcast, watching on YouTube, you're now seeing it. But yes, there are limited hull ships available. The Constellation Phoenix, which I've got the Emerald. It's a beautiful ship. It's totally worth the $350, whatever it is. That is May 17th and May 18th. The Idris and the Javelin, May 21st and 22nd. And then your Krakens, May 25th and 26th. And so you see the waves. I sent a tweet on it if you're following me on socials. So there's the news of Invictus Launch Week. I'm going to shut up real quick. Paul, give us your last thoughts on Invictus Launch Week. What do you hope happens when you're walking away in a week or so and you're done with Invictus Launch Week? What do you hope that you had experienced? What do you think is going to be your tinfoil hat predictions of surprises and things that maybe we haven't heard of? Give us like your culmination analysis of this ILW.
So this is the first event that CIG will have done since CitizenCon that I think is going to have any sort of momentum to it. Like, the IAE was good. It wasn't a bad one, but like it didn't quite hit as hard as CitizenCon did, because it was sort of like overshadowed by all of the stuff with CitizenCon. It kept the hype going, I think, for the game, and people excited. Yeah. But ILW, Invictus is always a completely different experience because it's the middle of the year, and for a lot of folks, content creators and gamers, this is the time period when no games release. Between May and like August is a dead zone where no one wants to release any games because, it's the summer and people like to go out and touch grass,
do things,
do things with their families,
It's funny.
And as a result, it kind of dies down. So you start to see a lot more people come in. And so this is the first time I think CIG has a chance to really impress people with the changes that have been made. So they've wowed people with the visuals and things like the future of gaming with the Star Engine trailer, and now they're going into put up or shut up. Here you go. This is what we're talking about. This is what we did. This is the changes. Here's the improvement. And the backend's a lot more improved than in the past. And so I will say what I'm expecting and hoping for is walking in and having a better experience than last year, and that it is almost imperceptible change in terms of performance and like other issues compared to normal gameplay.
Yeah.
If that happens, I will be floored. I will be ecstatic.
Sure.
Because everyone knows who's played this game long enough that these big events are great, but they're always the worst performance of because it's really like a stress test for CIG. It's free for everyone to play, and so people hop in for the first time and play it, and it just destroys the back end servers. If CIG can stick the landing for this, I think they've set themselves up to grow dramatically, and us as a community are going to start growing tremendously with new faces and new ideas and new people coming in from other parts of the gaming community, which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on
and do it.
I'm gonna say this.
Do it.
This is something I've been predicting for a very long time because it's in the lore. It has to do with Anvil, but Anvil Corvette. I think we might actually see. Maybe not a sale. Maybe we could see a sale. We may, at the very least, get a more of a concrete idea of them actually doing a Anvil Corvette, a Polaris-ish sized ship.
Interesting.
From Anvil. And my theory from the whole thing is that it is a brawler. Whereas you have, because they like to do their MMO things and like they're for D&D things where. Yeah. If your Polaris is your DPS, if your Polaris is your ranged attack,
mage,
the range mage, the ranger, the thing that's designed to like just nuke your enemy with one, the rogue backstabbing you for in this buckets of dice damage sort of situation. They, the problem about those is they're glass cannons. They can dish out hits, they can't take it. So you need your fighter, your paladin, your tank to come up and protect the squishies from getting hurt. And there really isn't that there in that range because it's the first and only Corvette we really have. The Perseus sword is in there, but it's...
Pause. If any listener responds with a terrapin, I'm going to virtually choke you.
It's so tiny. Why would that be? That's not a tank.
People are like, oh, the HP is so high on the Terrapin. I'm like, it has no purpose in the game. The Terrapin is a waste of a ship. Okay, sorry. Please, Paul.
It's like asking the gnome to be a paladin. That's not going to do well. It's not going to end well.
I've got a whole community that's like, oh, Sulyce, what about the Terrapin? I'm going to virtually choke.
I would love to see it. I want to see a Terrapin try to tank shots for a Polaris. It'll be so funny to watch that thing just get turned into dust in one shot. It's like that's not a tank. That's like a disposable chaff you're throwing out to hopefully kill.
That's right.
Oh, but
sorry to interrupt.
But there is no like the Perseus exists, but it's for people who don't know because people get confused. It's smaller than the Hammerhead. The Perseus is not very big. It's big, but it's not like Polaris sized.
Yeah.
So you need something that's Polaris sized that fits that role of the tank, and I think Anvil's the perfect manufacturer for it. And they're very much like maneuverability, not necessarily a lot of speed, but a lot of maneuverability, armor, and just guns. Yeah. And in my mind, an Anvil Corvette it has a couple of missiles. It's a little bit of missiles here and there. It's no place for a fighter. It's just a ship. And most of the ship is just a railgun.
I love it.
like a size below an Idris sort of thing. But as a result, it doesn't have a ton of weapons. It's just designed to sit up there and be like, pay attention to me, because if you don't pay attention to me, I'm gonna put a Aurora-sized hole in your ship.
Nice.
So you have to pay attention to me, but I am not nearly as dangerous as the Polaris who's going to attack you. So if you pay attention to the Polaris, you're still going to get hurt. That kind of like that sort of experience, that tank.
I like that.
That like, I am here and I am dangerous, but I am not going to be as dangerous as them. But you have to pay attention to me still, because if you don't, I'm going to hurt you.
Sure.
And I love that sort of role, and I think Anvil is perfect for it. There's already a role that Chase was building one of those before he died, and so it's still there's some slip of paper somewhere in lore in Anvil's office that has that thing written out there, and I think that's the and put it in the game because it's perfect for what CIG wants to do in the future. And I think them thinking about 1.0 again, I think it's very solid and grounded, but I've talked about this for 3 years. I've said this is going to happen for 3 years, and it's never happened. So the tinfoil hat is on. I still think it's going to happen, but who knows? Maybe this Invictus, maybe next Invictus, but
And at the very least, it goes in a hologram room. Like it's just like a manifestation of it. So for my tinfoil hat, and I'm actually going to be conservative here. Like I actually do think the Polaris is going to be like a finale thing, or very soon after. I mean, again, I feel confident that we are pretty damn close. For them to put it in front of us as close as they are, now you can't tour it, Roger. Mm-hmm. But for it to be as close to the gamers as possible in flight, I mean, that means they're pretty confident with the exoskeleton. Starjump Grimm has done a lot of research on like the inner workings and how to rebuild it on his fleet viewer. Like, I think we're really damn close to the Polaris. So, and then I don't know, I'm going to piss off the community by saying this, but like the BMM, though it's not a fighter, and I don't think it's Invictus Launch Week, but like, I don't know, I feel like Crew has the BMM in his back pocket. Like he's just waiting. He's like, you know what? We've been working on this for like 30 years. Yeah. I'm going to finally present it to you when you're least expecting it. But like, it's not waiting on anything. It's not modularity. It's not like it's not waiting on it. It needs to just happen. Kind
of is. It's waiting on selling stuff because it's a mobile bazaar. It's like a slightly smaller version of the privateer.
Yes.
And so I think that's really what it's waiting on. But CIG has been building that tech for a while. They actually at one point We're talking about testing a roving trader, kind of like, the Khajiit in Skyrim, you know, just like these traders that kind of wander around and you can talk with them as NPCs. And I was like, that's the gameplay that you want for the merchantmen. So I don't know. There could be some out there, but
this is probably like a whole nother podcast because we just hit the 2 hour mark. We're 2 hours and 2 minutes into this.
I told you, I come on a podcast, it goes long.
It's perfect though. Beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
But like, the Carrack launched with drone operations, but not turned on. So just give us the damn hole without mercantile, like without the mercantile loop. Like, cool. Done. Like, I just want to fly the damn thing. Anyways, let's not get into that conversation. I'm not serious when I say the BMM. I feel like crew's gonna wait for a very hilarious time to be like, okay, here's the BMM. Who thought? Maybe Alien Week this year. I don't know.
Maybe.
But dude, Paul, let me just start the outro. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. 50 episodes later, probably 49 too late. Really do appreciate it. I doubt there's anybody listening or watching who doesn't know who you are, but let us know how we can get more of you, your content. Where can we find more of the AstroPub?
So you can find my content on gaming and conversations like this, and kind of looks into the monthly reports, patch notes, roadmap, all that kind of stuff. And also just gaming in general, just playing the game and playing other games at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub and on YouTube, youtube.com/TheAstroPub live. And if you like the lore stuff, me and my weird brain disease of soaking up useless information from video games and distributing it out again, you can follow me at youtube.com/TheAstroHistorian.
Love it. Yeah, all of this, the last 2 hours was straight off the dome. The dude has no notes in front of him at all. Like, you're good at what you do. You're awesome at your craft.
Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely thank you for this. For Beyond the Verse, follow us at all socials /BTV_cast. Email us at contact@beyondtheversehq.com to be part of the conversation. Ask questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts. I want to hear it all, and we will talk about it. Generates very awesome conversation. At the end of each podcast over on Spotify, we have a Q&A and poll we talked about at the very beginning of this episode. And last, join our in-game organization, Sole Provision, at www.robertspaceindustries.com/orgs/provision. Tomorrow, we are going into Invictus Launch Week together. There's 19 of us signed up. We're going to role play the shit out of it. We're going to walk through the convention hall and see everything together as an org. It's going to be amazing. If not Sole Provision, find yourself an org, play with friends. This game is infinitely better with friends, like Paul. So thanks again, sir. Really do appreciate it. For everybody, absolutely, anytime. For those listening and watching, safe travels as you traverse Beyond the Verse. Take care, everybody.